Hi, friends. Hey, team. How's it going? All right. Just getting set up. Um, just recently got ready for this. So thanks for your patience. Just realizing the color is really dark. Anyway, it's not distracting. Okay. So the life of being live and on camera as a woman, right? Another conversation for another day. Anyway, welcome to the almost end of the month. It's the last Thursday of January. Can you believe it? I certainly cannot believe it. It's wild because the first month of the first month of the new year has come and almost gone. Like that's wild. That's really wild. Let me just make sure these notifications are off where they need to be off. Okay, so my intention for you for the next 45 minutes, here's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about closing out January and making sure that you are really harvesting all of the goodness, the gold that um, the month came to bring you. Because a lot of times, especially if we haven't had the month that we would love, if we haven't had, the big wins, and especially in January, because in January we talk about resolutions, we talk about a new year, we talk about our hopes and dreams for the rest of the year. We start to get very excited about the hope and promise of a new beginning, right? And so, what often happens is that if things don't go the way that you expect them to or desire them to January that you were thinking about January 1st, the month goes by and here we are January 25th. What? And perhaps things didn't go exactly the way that you intended them to. Maybe it wasn't such a big bang. Maybe it wasn't such, you know, landslide successes left and right. Yeah. Well, maybe it wasn't like an immediate new job opportunity or whatever kind of change that you're looking to make in your life, like massive amounts of revenue or whatever it is. That's okay. That's okay. If you didn't have the results that you wanted to have this month, what can happen internally is a lot of emotional constriction. So you might be feeling disappointment, you might be feeling frustration, you might be in a sense of giving up. Right? I think it was January 12th. That is the official day that most people give up on their resolutions that they set 12 days ago. But think about it. If we're not consistently seeing progress, it's very normal for people to say, you know what, I'll try again next year. I'll try again next month. Or it's just not going to happen. Why did I even set my goals so high? Why did I even set my sights so high? Now, that's just for you who have perhaps had a month that you didn't want to have before, the type of month that you didn't expect to have, or maybe it's a bit of a disappointment. For those of you who had a killer year or a killer month and you're just like, I'm ready, I'm ready, let's keep this year going, let's go into February and just keep this train moving. Fabulous. This session is for you too. So, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look back over your last 4 weeks. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with the big picture wins, like the obvious ones, like, oh, I signed a new client, or I got a new job, or, I met this person, or something big happened. These are the obvious wins. So, what I want you to do is grab a piece of paper. Ideally, for the future, ideally, if you don't know me already, or if we've never worked together, always bring a journal with you. Always bring something to take notes because we move through, especially in this format, we move through stuff kind of quickly. Also, this is currently being recorded so that you get to watch this again. And there's various transcription services out there. My favorite is Otter, like the cute animal, otter.ai. It will, in real time, transcribe the words that I'm saying. So if you don't want to be like, ooh, like trying to write everything down, it's a free app, otter.ai. Go ahead and download it and let that do the work so that you can be physically and mentally present for this, whatever works for you. But for these thinking and exploration and reflection prompts, What I want you to do is just write down simple questions that I'm going to prompt you with. Okay. The first one is, what were my obvious wins from this month? Okay. So go ahead and bullet them out. You don't have to write a whole paragraph. This is just to kind of get the thoughts going, get the brain set on focusing its attention on um, an experience. How do I want to say this? It's an experience of expansion instead of its default experience of here's what I didn't do. Here's what I missed. Here's how I failed. Here's how I didn't measure up. That the brain will do that all day unassisted. But that's we'll get into it in another conversation. That's wired into your survival system, and that's not where we are now. We need to be helping the brain move from its automatic patterns of focusing on what didn't happen. Here are the disappointments, here are the failures, here are the things that I'm not happy about. And we want to guide it toward focusing on here are the wins. Here are the other things that we're going to focus on today. I won't skip ahead, but basically, in order to start making that shift, let's start with the obvious things. So from January 1st to January 25th, and also there's 6 more days of January. So there's all kinds of wins that can come out of the woodwork between now and the 31st. We're just kind of getting a head start on it. What were the obvious wins for you? Maybe you had a first date with someone. Maybe you got a note of interest from a job recruiter. Maybe you sold your car. This could be anything. This could be personal life. This could be professional life. What we're doing is building the muscle of noticing intentionally. When we can build that muscle, then we can direct it anywhere we want to. So right now we just want to build the foundational muscle. What were the obvious wins? The things that you were pleased about, the things that that are easy to come to mind when you ask what you're grateful for. Okay? Once you've listed out the bigger wins, now we move into what are the things that happened that kind of felt out of the blue that I was really happy with. So you can call them coincidences if you believe in coincidences. You can call them luck. You can call it luck. What were the lucky things that happened that I was really happy with this month? Again, we're shifting our attention to focus and to maintain focus on things that served us in some way. We're starting with the easy targets. Okay. So things that happened, maybe not because of your doing, maybe because it seems kind of random, it seems coincidental, it seems like just pure luck. Things that happened seemingly outside of your control that you were really happy with. So this could be a random phone call from a friend. This could be, oh, I got a refund check from Verizon because it turns out they overbilled me 2 years ago and that came in the mail. Um, or my neighbor moved and they were giving away this amazing coffee table. And so I have that coffee table now. It could be anything random. So start listing those out as well. Oh, oh my gosh. Guys, in all of my, and that's appropriate, like, yay for fireworks. It's appropriate for the talk, but man, these, these gestures, I really got to learn them so I know what to do and what not to do. The amount of like random thumbs ups that have been happening in my it's not happening now. Okay. Anyway, these gestures updates, I need some kind of education around this. So we're talking about the stuff that came out of the blue, seemingly random, oh my God, see, there it is. Seemingly coincidental that you really enjoyed, that you were grateful for, that you liked. Also the wins that you had a hand in, right? Something to do with you happened in a way that you are really happy it happened in that particular way. That's the big stuff. That's the obvious stuff. And if that category is not very full, without proper training, we tend to just write off the rest of the month and say, well, I didn't, and the brain starts to slide back to focusing on, well, I didn't do this. This didn't happen. This thing never came through. This person bailed on me. This, da, 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 da. We start to go back into listing the disappointments because the surface, the big, obvious stuff isn't as full as we would like. Here's where you get to develop a different level of expertise. So we move from the big stuff and we move into the stuff that's below the surface. And here's where we point to what are the ways in which I showed up today? Or, sorry, this month, not today. What are the ways in which I showed up? So notice that it's a question right there. It is not qualified. There are no additional parameters around it. There are no expectations around anything. The question is broad intentionally. What are the ways in which I showed up this month? Because here's where we're going to be able to focus on you building a sense of pride, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of, yeah, I did that. And notice it is not tied to your results and outcomes. So this could be perhaps you're at work and you are really proud of the effort that you put in to practice, to training, right? Or you're really proud of how you showed up to an interview, right? I don't care what the outcome was. Whether you got the job, whether you were promoted to the next level, whether they chose you for the team, this is results separate. Okay, so this is important to develop a sense of pride, a sense of ownership, a sense of regardless of what happens, independently of the results, I am really pleased with how I showed up for this. Right. So this could be anything as big as I showed up for an interview and I'm really proud of how I navigated that conversation. I didn't get the job or I still haven't heard back yet, but you know what? I'm really proud of how I showed up for that situation. And it could be something seemingly small in the grand scheme of things. Like, I'm really happy with how I reached out to my friend when she was in need. I haven't heard back from her, or she's super busy and so she hasn't gone back to me, or whatever the thing is, whatever the result is. But you can be proud of yourself in the act of reaching out. So this is celebrating everything that you have done, the ways in which you showed up for life. You showed up for your personal life, you showed up for your professional life, you showed up to be even in the space of I don't know. A lot of folks in my world are in a space of I don't know, or in a space of ambiguity, of uncertainty. Right? And so why this is so important is because transition from one way of living, working, loving, relating, creating, when we shift from one way of doing those things into another, that shift is inherently full of uncertainty. It's inherently full of unpredictability. And so we don't want to be beholden to the outcome. In order for us to feel a sense of control, in order for us to feel a sense of happiness, of pride, we don't want our emotions tied to things outside of ourselves. We want to be able to create a sense of power, a sense of happiness, a sense of intentional emoting, intentional experience of life based on what we've done. Now, if the results of the actions that we take are what we would prefer them to be, cherry on top. That's even better. That's another win. That type of win, that type of greatness, that type of yay, essentially, that moves back up into that top layer of the obvious wins, the obvious W's, the obvious celebrations for this month. But it's so important for us to go to that lower level and say, you know what, whatever happened, it's a separate conversation. I'm really proud of how I showed up in this particular thing, regardless of what the outcome was. So it's a separate assessment of how you showed up and what was the result of that action. This is where most people never ever give themselves the proper credit. And therefore, they're going around hinging their sense of fulfillment, accomplishment, whether this was a great month or not. They're hinging all of that assessment and that way of being, right? Their happiness essentially on only the outcomes, when really the outcomes are such a small part of how we're showing up in life, right? So this could be the big stuff. Like I'm really proud of how I showed up for my team today, or how I showed up for my team a couple weeks ago when we were going through something really tricky. Or it could be something small. Like I'm really happy that I chose to just wait and let someone else go in front of me in the line. This doesn't have to be earth-shattering stuff, guys. It doesn't have to be like, "I'm so proud of all the hard work that I put into this, and then I showed up and it was amazing, and I just did a bomb job." Also, oh my god, now I sound like I'm from 2000. But the importance of recognizing that even in the micro moments, those small moments in life, the small moments in time where we can take ownership over, yeah, I'm proud of how I did that. I'm proud of how I reacted to the news of maybe someone not, oh my gosh, these gestures, guys. This could be some kind of like you could place bets or something on how many gestures and reactions are going to pop up through the course of this training today. It'll be 45 minutes long, so there's plenty of space for lots of gestures to be just randomly popping up. I wish I could do them on purpose. Like I need a guide. If any of you know how to know like where I can find the guide of what all the gestures are, please drop that in the chat so I can do some homework before my next training. So the micro moments of how we show up culminate into the experience of our lives month to month. You did a lot of stuff in January. There were a lot of minutes in these 25 days of January. There's a lot of minutes in the final 6 days of January. Those are all opportunities, the waking minutes, they're all opportunities for you to show up in a way where you feel in line with who you actually are, who you want to be, and what kind of life you would love to be creating and living and experiencing. Okay? Now, this is not all rainbows and sunshine, right? The point of this is to train the brain, like I said, to move from this column of focusing on, yeah, but I did this really badly, or like, oh, I was kind of rude to this person, or I didn't get that job opportunity, or here are all the disappointments and failures. It's the brain is naturally going to be like, "Meow, let's focus on how you failed this month, right?" And like I said, we're not going to get into the why. The point is that it's so easy for us to be focusing our attention subconsciously and unintentionally on this type of information. We're assessing based on the what we did poorly, what we did subpar, or what we didn't do at all. And so that experience, it doesn't matter what those things are, the focusing on that particular type of content is going to leave you feeling depleted, deflated, uninspired, demotivated. And we don't need that kind of energy going into February, right? Now, this is important stuff to focus on if you're saying, like, I did this thing and it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. Yes, harvest the lessons there and say, okay, what do I need to do differently? But also harvest the win. There's always a win. There's always a win to be celebrated somewhere. It could even be a super small one, but it could be, like really, I really like just did poorly in that interview that I had, and it's just eating me up. Like it's just like I obsess about it. I think about it all the time. I ruminate on it. I feel so like, ugh, like I just can't. It's always in the back of my mind. So go through that situation, as uncomfortable as that is, right? This is another kind of mini lesson within the lesson. But go through that situation and take a look at, okay, what do I need to know or what do I need to develop? What's within my control to develop? Because maybe there was stuff that's outside of your control. Like maybe the interviewer was distracted, or maybe it was not what you thought it was going to be, the job opportunity. And there are other things that could have played a factor. But you get to say, okay, of what was in my control, what can I learn to do better? And oh my guys, I need to basically like just stop talking with my hands. What can I learn to do better? What can I do differently? What can I take from this? And what did I do well? It could be something in this particular example of the job interview, it could be something as small as I'm really pleased with how I followed up with the interviewer, and I was really gracious in thanking them for their time and opportunity. That's a really small thing, but it's an important thing. It's very, very important that we recognize areas to celebrate, right? Because otherwise, we're already our worst critic anyway. We don't need to be harsher than possible, than necessary, right? So find the things to do better, find the things to learn from, but also be intentional about consciously celebrating even in the losses. Okay. All right. So we went over the big stuff, the big, what are the big obvious wins? What are the big obvious, like, yeah, this was great. In my month of January, this thing happened. This thing kind of came out of the blue. Oh, this super lucky thing came out of the blue. Write that all down. Look for the second level of here are the ways in which I showed up that I feel really good about. I feel proud about it. I feel like that was in alignment with my values. That was in alignment with the person that I'm trying to be in this world. I'm going to celebrate those things. And then what we just did a second ago was celebrating the wins that were in the losses. Okay. We are creating a long list of all kinds of things, big and small, and everything in between, that are worthy of recognition and worthy of celebration. Because when we keep bringing our focus back, we got to be repetitive about this. Bring it back to the expansive experience of January. You start to see the whole month in a very different light. When we talk about disappointments, failures, frustrations, losses, the brain is going to magnify how significant those actually are. Okay, so that disproportionate focus of these things, these unpreferred outcomes, is going to color your reflection on the entire month. It's going to write a narrative and feed a narrative in your mind that January was kind of a flop, or January wasn't that great, or I'm just ready to write this month over, write this month off and get to the next month. How many times have you been in a situation where you're like, I'm just ready for this to be done and over with so that I can start over next week, next month, next year, tomorrow? At that point, mentally, we've written it off. We say, this is no longer worth my time. I'm done with this. It's all bad. And we've broad brushed the whole month. When actually, when we do that, we throw all of these golden wins that we've just been harnessing, we throw them all out with that kind of broad brush assessment. So that's why it's so important for us to remember we're doing it on a monthly basis, but really part of your daily practice at the end of the day should include here's what I'm proud of today. Here's how I showed up today. But for right now, we're going to start with the monthly reflection, the monthly cadence. Eventually, this will become normal for you to the point where you start to say, what does this look like for me on a daily basis? Okay, so that's where we're going, but not today. One step at a time. For example, you get to say, I'm really proud of how I showed up for this training. I didn't have to. You could be doing anything else with your time rather than watching me, listening to me. And you're choosing to be here because you believe there's something for you. You believe there's something useful, valuable, informative that can enhance your quality of life. And so, what you're doing when you engage with me, when you engage with these videos, when you engage with stuff that you believe is going to help you, that's you showing up for you. And that act is worthy of recognition and celebration. Nothing is nothing is too small to be brushed off. Okay? You want to be your greatest supporter instead of your greatest critic. That takes practice. That takes practice. In this world, we got to back ourselves, right? Other people backing us, awesome. Oh, come on, gesture. That would have been the perfect time. Okay. But first, whether or not other people are backing us and cheering us on and rooting for us to get to the dreams that we have for ourselves, we have got to be our biggest supporters. And this is how we do it. We build a practice of celebration. We build a practice of recognition. So by showing up every month, this is going to be, like I said at the beginning, this is going to be this reflect and reset session will take place the final Thursday of every month, at least for the year of 2024. We'll see about 2025. And this is something that you can start to build into your own calendar, whether you watch it live or whether you build it into the calendar to watch it later, saying, okay, I'm going to watch the recording on the last Friday of the month, for example. Cool. Build in a cadence, build in a regularity for yourself so that the skill of shifting from defaulting to disappointment mode starts to be normalized to defaulting to, wait, I did this great, or that was good, I'm glad I did that way, I love this outcome, or you know what, in that micro moment, I'm really proud that I did it that way, that was aligned with my vision, the way I showed up in that micro moment. Don't leave those micro moments behind, folks. Okay, so um that's the reflection piece. So you can see this is multi-dimensional harvesting of the wins. So hopefully you can start to see the month of January, or at least the first 25 days of January, through a lens of expansiveness, of growth, of forward momentum, at least through a lens of appreciation and celebration. Okay. So as we're shifting gears from reflection to resetting, we're setting our sights on February. Now you have a 6-day buffer between now and February, right? So what I want you to remember is that there's no urgency around this. There's no hustle around this. And for some of you, that might be really tricky, really unfamiliar to release the hustle. Okay, because the idea of hustle means competition and scarcity. There's only so much to go around. There's only so much time. There's only so much opportunity. There's only so much whatever. And if you're operating from scarcity, you're already cutting yourself off at the knees. You're already doing yourself a disservice and you're making the road ahead harder. Okay. When we reset and we get ready to welcome in a new month and we get ready to walk into a new month, you get to choose, what am I using this time for? With my clients, we talk about our resources as team resources. It's an acronym, TEAM, time, energy, attention, and money. All of us have these 4 resources, various amounts of them, right? But when you're walking into a new month, what are you using your team resources for? We want to be allocating them first intentionally, right? Because oftentimes we got things just on autopilot, right? You open your phone to check an email, next thing you know, you're 30 minutes into Instagram. That was your attention resource that just got defaulted and hijacked away from you. Right? It happens to me more often than I would prefer. I will say that. Or what about things, let's talk about your money. What are things that you're paying for on a regular basis that are just either on autopilot and you kind of forgot you had that subscription, or that you paid for something and you're like, I didn't really want that purchase. I just kind of bought it because I got, I don't know, caught up in the hype or because I felt pressured into it. That's your money resource that's now been taken out of your control. When we talk about, or especially, your time is a big thing because we're talking in chunks of months, right? So when you take a look at the month of February, you can think of this is a beautiful like gift of this year, 29 days. And you can add the last 6 days of January, that's fine. So what, 35 days that you get to be intentional about how you're using that time. You get to say, I'm just going to keep repeating patterns that, okay, I'm just going to keep living the way I've been living. You can do that. That's fine. It's not expansive, but it's fine. You get to choose, what do you want? You want to find life, or do you want an intentional, expansive, fulfilling life? Okay. So here's a great opportunity to start taking stock of, how am I living and how can I live differently? How can I use my four resources, my time, my energy, my attention, and my money, in a way that brings me alive, that creates the month that I would love, the kind of experience I would love to have this February. Okay. So when we do that, we have to understand, what kind of month do you want? We can't be assigning things yet and making plans and setting actions and setting goals if we don't know what the end is in the first place. For those of you who have been in my world for a while, you know I talk a lot about vision. Your vision is your long term image of what you would love your life to look and feel and consist of, to look like, to feel like, and to consist of. Get my prepositions in order. This takes listening. Okay, this takes paying attention to noticing when you come alive. When you come alive in the thought, the presence, the idea of a particular activity, concept, person, way of being, right? When you start to notice, I really come alive in these situations, or I feel like I would come alive in this type of situation. Like if I had, $100,000 sitting in my checking account, I would come alive. I feel pretty alive, right? Or when I feel like I have space to write, I really come alive. Or when I have space to really, when I connect and have a really great conversation with someone who I really appreciate and respect and love, that brings me alive. You start to notice these pieces of basically vitality, these situations or people or circumstances or things that help you to feel a sense of vibrancy and aliveness. Capture all of that, and you get to describe your ideal day. Now, there's something interesting, because the other day I was playing with ChatGPT. I actually haven't told anyone this. I was playing with ChatGPT, and one of the things that my clients tend to struggle a lot with in the beginning is writing their vision, because ideally you write it in the form of a narrative. You write it as if it's like a journal entry from the day, like like a dear diary situation. You're reflecting on your day. At the end of the day, you imagine yourself that this has been like the best day ever. What would you be writing in that journal entry? Oh my gosh, this was incredible. We just got back from our trip to Fiji. Oh my gosh, my husband and I'm so in love with this guy. Oh my God, he's amazing. Like, I so appreciate these things about him. Um, we had the most incredible time on this trip, and we just came back from the trip. But tomorrow, I'm so excited to get into this project with my teammates. Really excited because I have a call with my sister on the books later this week. So you're starting to write basically a description of what this person's life is like. That's your vision. And you only include things that you would love. You wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, all this stuff is so great. And this car payment really sucks, but da da da. Like, don't include things that you don't want. Include the things that you would love instead of those things that you don't necessarily love. Okay. You want to tease out the vision. How to develop a vision is a whole separate training. That's actually going to be available for as a course to be purchased on my website. We definitely don't have the time to go into it today, but you can start with a general idea of, what would I love to be part of my life? And for those of you who are in career transitions, think about, what kind of stuff would I love to be doing at my work every day? What kind of people would I love to be around? What kind of feelings would I love to have throughout my day? Do I want to feel respected? Do I want to feel challenged? Do I want to feel fulfilled? Do I want to feel curious and intrigued? Like I'm getting some mental stimulation here, right? And at the end of the day, do I want to feel totally depleted and exhausted and like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to just crash on the couch when I get home? Or would you love at the end of your workday to feel accomplished and satisfied and say, I'm really proud of the work I did today, and I can't wait to go to dinner with my friend. because you have that sense of energy. You're not totally running on fumes at the end of the day. Start to paint a picture of the life that you would love. Use that picture as guidance for what we're doing in February. Okay? A lot of times what happens is that we set these very aggressive goals and we're like, I'm gonna hustle, like make it happen, like make my dreams come true and whatnot. Like literally everybody on the internet talks about that. And it's so done. It's so done. Because people are seeing, especially with the way that the world is these days, there's a lot of things, one calling for our attention, saying, hey, you need to pay attention about this thing that's happening on this side of the world. You need to pay attention about this politician being kind of a dick to other people. You need to pay attention to da, da, da. You have a lot of things calling for our attention. And so it's exhausting the brain. We don't need, that doesn't mean to dim your goals. It means to set goals that are supportive of your well-being. Okay, this vision of a beautiful life that you have, this is long term. You do not need to make it happen in the next 4 weeks of February. It can be very helpful, and I have a tool called what's called a milestone map, where we map out the milestones that you will cross between today's version of you and your life and the vision version of you and your life. There are certain milestones that you will hit along the way. We don't set goals around the end vision, we set goals around that first milestone. The example I love to use all the time is if you would love to be a New York Times best-selling author, vision, and you're meeting with your readers and you're doing a book tour and Oprah's interviewing you, you're on Oprah's favorite things list. But today's version of you has never written a book. There are going to be certain milestones that you're going to hit. First of all, there's going to be a journey that you got to take, right? You're not going to wake up on February 29th and say, I'm now a New York Times bestselling author, right? It's not impossible, but I imagine the kind of life that you would have to live to get to there in the next 35 days is not going to be a comfortable one for you. It's not going to be not comfortable. It's not the point, but it's not going to be a high quality one. That this will be at your expense in order to hustle your way to that, just to poop out at the end, right? So we start to say, okay, what are the milestones? How do I get from point A to point Z? We start with point B. So along the way, those milestones that vision of being a New York Times bestselling author is going to have to hit. You're going to have to cross milestones. I've finished my first manuscript. I've decided on a particular publisher. I have received the first hard copy published book of mine. I open the box and it's now physically in my hands. That's a milestone, right? I just had my first reader, or some Barnes and Noble has agreed to carry my book on their shelves. These are major milestones. So for you and your vision, you get to take a look at, okay, the journey that I got to be taking from where I'm at today, and I'm talking journey, not goals to hit, okay? These are things that you are going to experience. These milestones along the way, and there are going to be more that maybe that are not just part of your awareness right now. That's okay. You don't have to know them. We're going to focus more on the ones at the beginning of that journey. What are those first milestones that you're going to cross and experience on the way from today's version of you to your vision life? That, for example, in the author example, that is finishing your manuscript, right? Your final copy of the book. It's not published. You don't have a publisher. It's done, right? Or maybe you do have a publisher, but sometimes these things do happen out of order. So this is to your highest awareness. Okay, to your highest awareness, this is my first milestone. This is what you set goals around. Over the next month, what can I do to move me that much closer, not to make it happen? When we use that approach, that relaxes the nervous system. And sometimes what happens is that you end up reaching the milestone without hustling, because you've taken the pressure off and you can just be and you can do the things you need to do without the pressure on you. Okay. So you ask yourself when you're setting goals for the month of February, you say, what are the things that I can do this month, given the responsibilities that I have? So if you've got like, a baby shower to go to, if you've got things that are just on your schedule and calling for you, if you've got like, I don't know, a surgery scheduled or something, take those into consideration. Take the most important ones into consideration and say, given these facts and conditions I have in my month of February, here's what I can do. Here are the actions I could take to get me that much closer to that first milestone. Okay. So this could be something, either a one and done action, which is call this person, or sign up for this gym membership. It's an individual action that when you've done it, you've done it. There's also the habitual actions, the actions that you're going to take on an ongoing basis. So it might be, in the writing example, the author example, it might be something like, I'm writing for 20 minutes every day, at least 4 days a week. Okay. So here we're setting ourselves up for the wins so that we can look back on February 29th, or actually together on the last Thursday of February, we can look back and we can say, I'm really proud of how I showed up. I'm really proud of the steps that I took to get closer to that milestone in my vision. Okay. So this isn't about like crank out these goals and do the things. You can do that if you choose to do that. I'm telling you, there's another way. Okay. To go about it from a way of, what are the things that I could do to move me closer to that milestone? One, it allows the brain to get more creative. It allows it to think differently about how you get there. And two, it just brings up a huge list of possibilities. You don't have to do all of them. You just listen to the ideas that come out and you choose the ones that you're going to commit to for the next 4 weeks. Okay. So this isn't hard and fast. It's just simply opening it up, saying, oh, here are all the things. If I could do this, I could force myself to write 4 hours every day. Or maybe that's just going to make my life hell. So I'm going to commit to 45 minutes of writing 4 days a week. It takes the pressure off. It moves you closer because you're probably going to be more creative, more like a better writer in that particular example. But now you're living in a way that is aligned with the vision and that serves you and your present day quality of life. So much of this, for example, like hustle culture mentality, is this idea of suffer now so you can thrive later. Later is not guaranteed. Thrive now as you are on your way to thriving later. Previous generation and the generation before that and the generation before that, you doesn't matter if you hate your job. You suck it up and you work your face off. Hopefully you have a decent retirement. That was the prevailing thought, right? That mentality is brought into modern day goal setting, unfortunately. The problem is that it prioritizes a culture of suffering. It perpetuates an expectation of suffering. That's not what you're here to do. That's not what any of us are here to do. Of course, there's going to be uncomfortable situations, and there's going to be pain and constriction. But that's for us to move through. That's not for us to encourage and enhance within our lives whenever possible, right? So this approach helps you thrive on the way to thriving instead of sacrificing and suffering and making life much harder than it has to be at your own expense and probably at the expense of other people around you, so that you can reach this magical outcome. We're not about that life here. We are not. So to recap, because we're coming to the end of our 45 minutes together, our first reflect and reset session. We went through a process of harvesting all the wins, the obvious ones, the just below the surface ones, and then the ones that are really hard to find sometimes. You recognize the importance of that being an ongoing practice for you. And then once we celebrate how awesome January was, how awesome it was, then we take a look at, okay, where am I going in life? What kind of life would I love to be living? What are the milestones I'm going to need to hit? What are the milestones I'm going to experience on my way to that vision? And how can I live in a way this next month that'll get me that much closer to that first milestone? Okay, so I'm so happy you were able to join me today. And if this is useful, these are monthly trainings, wide open to the public, brand new as of January 1st. You're welcome to share them with friends, family, network, colleagues, whoever. Also, make sure you head over to robin.coach, Robin with a Y, .coach/events to RSVP for the upcoming training. So there's always a monthly masterclass. There's always a monthly reflect and reset. Okay, so feel free to invite everyone over to there. I do obviously additional trainings for my clients. So those of you who are clients, you will get notice about that. But I'm so grateful for your presence. I'm so grateful for you interacting. I'm so grateful for you taking the time to take a look at what does this look like for your own life and how can I live in a way that enhances my quality of life. And I hope to see you at our next event, which will be the next public masterclass. So head on over to subscribe for updates on robin.coach/events, and you'll be notified for all of those upcoming things. All right. Have a wonderful February, and you have had a wonderful January. Talk to you soon.